Let's talk about shooting for the stars. Joining me now is Hakeem Oluysei. He is an astrophysicist, author, and the president-elect for the National Society of Black Physicists. Thank you so much for being with us today. Before we jump into your book, talk about the recent space endeavors and how far scientists have come in answering the big questions.
We are in an age of technological revolution, right? We can measure things that we never could before. We're getting images of black holes from the Event Horizon Telescope. We now have gravitational wave observatories like LIGO, which now see black holes colliding all over the universe, and even neutron stars all over the universe. And it's also an era of looking for life in our own solar system as well as beyond. We have missions in our solar system like the Dragonfly mission that is going to go to the moon Titan and fly around and sample. And, Titan is the only other body in our solar system with abundant surface liquids. We have the TESS satellite, which is looking for planets around all the nearby stars, and the James Webb Space Telescope that can taste those atmospheres and determine if there is actually life in them.
It's really quite extraordinary, and we're going to talk about what other life might be out there in just a bit. But first, I want to get to some of your contributions and exploring things. What is the most exciting thing you've done?
Oh, that is a difficult question, right? So on the one hand, I can brag that everybody knows the work that I did in my graduate work because my PhD advisor and I, along with the rest of our team, pioneered the technology that is now the standard in giving us daily images from the sun. So when you see these images from instruments like the Solar Dynamics Observatory, where it looks like the sun is on fire and hairy, the late, great Dr. Art Walker led the team that did that first, and I was a young member of that team. Then I went into Silicon Valley, and I got several patents that are now in all the computer chips you use every day. And since then, working with my students, we've developed a new propulsion technology, and we also have revolutionized some ways in which we actually teach science and mathematics.
You are extraordinary. So I have to get your take. What are your thoughts on this week's first public hearings on UFOs in more than half a century? Have you seen a UFO, and do you believe that there is life beyond Earth?
Well, I think that, the question of do I believe is not really something you want to ask a scientist. And if they answer that, they're not thinking right as a scientist, because we can't do belief, right? So belief means to accept something that's true without confirming it to be true. We can do likelihoods and possibilities. And so we have not yet observed life on other worlds, but the laws of physics, what we understand about chemistry and biology, and what we understand about the history of life here on Earth tells us that life throughout the universe is likely wherever there are fluids, which again are several places in our own solar system. But now, having life, if we look at Earth, it was microscopic for 4 billion years, right? It's only the last ninth or 10th of Earth's history that we've had multicellular animals like ourselves. And then there's only one technologically advanced animal on our planet, and that's us. So getting life appears to be easy. Getting multicellular life requires certain lucky coincidences, and then having a technologically advanced civilization, again, it's a roll of the dice. Who knows?
All right, fascinating. Let's talk about your book. Give us an overview of what readers will find inside.
Yeah, my book is titled A Quantum Life, My Unlikely Journey from the Street to the Stars. And that subtitle is exactly accurate. So I break the book up into 4 parts. The first part I call Ghetto Child because, my parents split up. I was born in East New Orleans East, it's the name of the community. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and we moved every year for the next decade, my mother, my sister, and me. And where did we live? South Central Los Angeles, Houston 3rd Ward, Houston South Park, New Orleans 9th Ward, New Orleans East, and rural Mississippi. And, when I give talks about this, I say, what do those communities have in common? At least back then, you might get shot, right? And now, often you see a story like Hidden Figures, where you have some child that is engaged, that's in a rough world, but the parents protect them. That's not my story. My father was a very large drug dealer, and my first cousins on my mother's side, they were early members of the Crips gang in the early 70s. And so that's what they taught me. So I call my family life crime school, but then at the same time, I was a nerd, right? I loved to read. I always had a book in my hands, and I ended up discovering Albert Einstein and falling in love with the universe at 10 years old. And so, I never really was looking for astrophysics. I just wanted to understand the nature of reality and the nature of existence. And luckily, I got a lot of people helped me. So I always say I got by with hope, hustle, and help. And these people just showed up in my life, showed me the way to the next level. And eventually I meet Art Walker, again, the gentleman I talked to you about, who taught me how to be a scholar and a gentleman. And from there, the rest is history.
Wow, I am just blown away by your journey, and talk about well-rounded. I mean, you've been through it all.
I've been through a lot, right? And so the thing I left out is, I started selling drugs to my father at the age of 9. And by the time I'm 21, we're all addicted, right? So at the age of 21, 23, and 25, I found myself with a serious addiction. Okay, problem that I had to get over. And this is when I was in college. I dropped out of college and I was working as a janitor. And, one day I decide I'm going to try to move up to bellhop, right? Because, you can make more money. I was barely making $100 a week. And the way I would eat most days is when I would come to work, I would walk the hallways. And when people would order room service, they put their tray outside their door and I would come in and eat their leftovers, right? So I tried to move up to bellhop and they're like, not you, guy. You're going to the back, not the front. And so I thought to myself, if I was a college dropout at the time, and I thought I can't get by. This is my life. I'm going to be the janitor who can't move up to bellhop. So I better go back, get myself an education. And luckily, I had studied physics for fun throughout my childhood, and there was a ready major that had an economic future for me. So in many ways, I got lucky, but without the help of others, I would have gotten nowhere fast.
I have to ask, though, even in those darkest of times, you talk about your drug addiction and trying to just become a bellhop. Did you always know that there was something special within you?
Everybody around me was telling me that, but, because when you learn quickly and you do things well, people would say, oh, but there was a lot of people around me that were very smart, that were doing things well. And the difference was I was interested in the nerd stuff. And the nerd stuff have an academic future. I always tell the story of my sister's brother-in-law, who was a year younger than me, this dude, Chris Morgan. Chris, if you hear this, he'll tell you this the truth. But Chris used to drag me, right? We used to play all these games and compete on everything. And in the intellectual games, Chris would wipe the floor up with me. But when it came time to end high school, I was like, dude, what are you going to do? In my mind, I thought you got to go to the military, you got to go to college, you got to leave home. And I went to the Navy. Chris was like, I'm staying here getting a job. He was never interested in this stuff. Does that mean that he's less smart? Not at all, right? And he's certainly not less hardworking because he's a hardworking man, takes care of his kids as a single dad, So, life is complicated. My story came out the way it did. And what I try to show is that, I'm not a magic Negro. Right? We all have it in us. And it was just, that's what I was interested in. And so I feel like others who apply themselves like I did to these same topics can do exactly what I did.
I'm glad you acknowledge that, because that is such a stereotype, right? What can we as parents do to get our children excited about STEM?
Be excited about STEM. That's the very first thing. The saying is your children don't do what you say, your children do what you do, right? And so the best thing that we all can do is be an example for our kids. And I think one of the mistakes that we often make when we do social engineering and education is we always focus on the kids and we forget about the adults. So let me tell you another personal story. I have a son who's now 16. This kid, his sister taught him to read when he was very young. He could read like an adult when he was 3.5. No exaggeration. So I decided that I'm going to try to teach him math. He completes Algebra 1 at 7, Algebra 2 and Trig at 9, and Calculus starts it at 10 years old. So my mother says to me, when he's like 5 or 6 or so, she goes, I think he's smarter than you are. To which I replied, no, he ain't. His daddy got a PhD in physics. My parents didn't even graduate high school, right? So what I'm saying is that the conversation in my home is very different now than it was when I was a child. When I got to my PhD program at Stanford, 3 of the guys in my PhD group, their fathers were PhD physicists, right? Look at the NBA today. How many of the top stars had fathers who were professional basketball players, right? So what matters, so I've learned, I've come to understand, I've been a part of our education ecosystem at every level, from the local to the federal, and even internationally. If you are well educated in mathematics by the time you graduate high school, it happens in one of two ways only. It's in your family or you're lucky. That's it.
Well, you are breaking barriers and paving the way. I know it's never easy to be the first and only. Tell us, where can people find your book and learn more about your work?
That's right. My book is titled A Quantum Life, and it is available wherever you buy books. It's at bookstores, it's on Amazon, it's at the publisher's website. And, I'm all over the place as far as my work goes. So follow me on my social media. I'm Hakeem Oluysei on Instagram. I use my full name, Hakeem Oluysei, on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. And I don't use Facebook probably as much as I should to publicize things, but I'm there as well.
What's next for you?
Well, things are really exciting. It turns out that I got a deal with Harpo, run by Oprah, and Tribeca Films, Robert De Niro, to make my book into a movie or a series. Previously, I gotten a deal with Chadwick Boseman and Working Title, but after Chad passed away and the option ended, the contract went away. And so Oprah was very excited to jump on board and take over, and that's where we are. And also, I'm about to launch a new podcast with Roddenberry Entertainment. For those of you who are nerds like me, Gene Roddenberry is the founder of Star Trek. So we're going to do a live taping in LA in a couple of weeks. So look forward to it.